Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to the Allilon Unplugged event number 11. So tonight I have something quite fun for you. First of all, for those of you who it's your first time here, first time logging in, welcome. Tonight I've got something quite fun. And let me just double check this is live, bear with me. Yes, we are live, perfect, okay. So, tonight I'm going to do something based on our latest collection. Last week we had the privilege of being in Poland and we did some really, I'd say, some creative work. And today I want to do something which is a bit more selfish, something a little bit more fun, something a little bit more avant-garde, not necessarily consumer friendly as such, something more for you as a hairdresser and as the industry. So, let me go straight into my haircut. I really want to focus on my haircut tonight because it's quite an intricate shape, so I need to be really concentrating on what I'm doing. If I spin the chair around a little bit. So the first thing I've done is I've started by putting in, and I've pre-cut one section just to see how the hair responds to me. I've basically put a section that runs from here, it goes up and round, and then it curves into a circular shape, which is going to come down, and then when I get to this point, it's going to rotate off again and be a bit more of an unusual type of zone. And what's going to happen is, right now, it's hard to visualize what I'm going to do. But as I'm working, it will become more and more apparent in the shape that I'm trying to create. I'm going to be using a combination of techniques to basically flatten the shape, change the weight distribution. This is a very, it's going to be quite a strong look, okay? This is my model Karina, beautiful girl. So she makes my life a lot easier, obviously, when it comes to cutting the shape. So, let me crack straight on. I started with my first section, which follows the zone of this connection. And my cutting line is round. So vertically, in this scenario, my vertical shape is round, and my horizontal shape is also going to be round, because I'm going to be working on the base. Now, we recently just had the hair bleached. So the hair is always slightly more aggressive in texture after you've bleached it. So my advice to you is make sure you use a really good cutting lotion to cut the shape. I've used the Day Mist. One, because it rehydrates the hair, but two, it makes it really easy for my comb to glide through. Now the hardest thing with what I'm doing now is trying to work cleanly and methodically away from my length. So in this scenario, what I'm doing is my number system, which is something we focus on quite a bit when we teach people, is working section 1, round cutting line, working on the base. Section 1 is going to go to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so forth. Now there is another trick you can do which will help you isolate your zones if you're working on zones. One of them is this: if you cut all around the perimeter of the zone, then when you're working off that, you've got a guide everywhere you work. You've got a guide on top, and obviously you'll have the guide in which the initial cutting line is. In my scenario, I'm not necessarily worried so much about focusing on isolating the zone, because I'm going to work really cleanly and try and really work methodically. I'm not using clips, I'm using the product and the water to basically disguise the shape. Yeah? So now, taking a curved section, and I'm combing the hair. I'm combing the hair once away, but then before I cut it, I comb it in the opposite direction like this. Okay? Now this is section number 3, and to make it easier for me, what I do is I tilt the head down slightly, so I'm standing on top of the head. If the head is upright, what's going to happen is I'm going to end up bending my spine, which isn't best for the control. Whereas if I tilt the head down, technically I'm pulling the hair straight out from the head. That enables me to control my over direction, as well as my cutting line. Now when I'm cutting the hair, every single section, what I'm doing is I'm basically pulling the hair that I'm introducing straight out from the base. I'm combing it once and I'm cutting it once. And I'm not necessarily scared to take the shape down to a specific length. Now when the hair has been bleached, like we said before, the hair tends to be quite aggressive in texture, because the cuticles are all swollen and it's quite hard to work and groom the hair cleanly. So my tip to you is try to use the tight end of the comb more consistently throughout. That way what you're doing is you're making sure that you've got a constant control over your shape. So use the tight end of the comb, really groom. And normally what I would do, as I'm working, I would comb this down so it starts to set. But at the moment, my main priority is to have a good enough guide to be able to work from, because I am going quite short. Another good thing to think about is obviously the width of your fingers. In this scenario, because my fingers are touching the scalp, I need to be careful that I use the same part of my fingers, because if I use this part of my finger to cut, I'm actually quite lucky because I've got good tension there, but majority of people don't have great tension here, so try and avoid cutting hair here. Try and work from this point onwards, and that way I know roughly the same width either side. It's only when I get to this bit is when it gets really fat. So try and avoid working past this part of your finger. That way you've got a consistent, or as a consistent length as you can. Can you see how the hair wants to stick to itself where it's quite brittle? So I come round again, I comb the hair out, and I execute my shape. Now, feel free tonight to ask me any questions you want. Andy will be able to tell me what it is you're asking me, and I will be able to hopefully answer them as best as I can for you. Tonight's haircut is based on an idea which is based on our latest collection, which was released in Chile last week with Pedro and Johan. And basically our latest collection is called Wiggle. So the idea behind this shape is that I'm going to create a wiggly element of length in a really crafted, fitted shape. So my initial wiggle, should we say, will be this length that I'm going to be leaving out. And it's hard for you to see it right now, but you will see it towards the end of the shape. I'm not scared to take the hair down. Okay, now that I've started to, now my guide is all the way back here, what I'm going to do with this hair here is I'm going to wet it down and I'm going to comb it into place. So I wet the root, I use the Daily Mist from Davinus, and then I basically groom this hair down. And what will happen is the root will start to calm itself down, obviously because it's been cut, it tends to react, doesn't it? So by combing it down, the heat from the head will start to set the hair into position, which will make it much easier for me later on when it comes to blow drying. Okay.
So Johnny, how are you working this whole section? Are you starting in the middle? Are you starting in the top? Are you starting in the bottom?
Well, in this scenario, because I'm trying to work away from the hair that I've sectioned off, this hair here, it's easier for me to start on top of the head. That way I know I've got I'm secure. I'm cutting away from my danger area, which is my length that I want to keep. And I'm basically taking all this shape down, and I'm not worried about anything here. There's no hair that I'm grooming out of the way because I'm cutting it all off. So I'm not necessarily worried about this hair here getting in my way. Basically, my advice would be, it's a good question, Andy, my advice would be try to work away from your length. That way, as you're working, you're not interfering with anything. Okay, I'm coming up to the last two sections of that particular amount of hair. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm basically combing it away so you can see the section is sitting away from my length. Because the hair is quite short and it's obviously got quite a bit of expansion to it because of the cuticle, you have to keep the hair damp and you have to try and work as cleanly as you can. And every section I'm grooming my number system to the previous, no sorry not to the previous, sorry, to the following section. So 1 will 2 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5 and so forth. Now as I come around here, this is where it starts to get interesting because I need to be careful because I want to keep some length in the center. So I need to start to really think about and not forget the shape that I'm trying to create here.
Another question here, Johnny.
Okay, who was the first question from?
Okay, sorry, I've gone past it now.
It's okay.
So I do apologise.
No problem.
So this is from Ryan King.
Hi, Ryan.
Okay, is there any plans to do education in Australia?
In Australia, that's a very good question, actually. Wow. Basically, ironically, I got emailed the other day from somebody based in Australia asking us if we would be interested in moving the whole company. No, in going to Australia to do some education. That could definitely be an option. It's something that I need to think about. Obviously, at the moment, if I'm completely honest, there isn't any plans confirmed. So the answer at the moment is no. But will it happen? Definitely, it will do at some point. When, how, I'm not quite sure. We are doing some stuff in New Zealand. We have a really good friend of ours called Krista Louiselle, who basically represents us in New Zealand as a friend, as well as a kind of an agent, a representative of Allilon. And we're doing some stuff in New Zealand this year, and we did some stuff last year in New Zealand. Just bringing attention back to my haircut. So now, as I get to the crown, wet it down again with Day Day. And what you do, because you've cut the hair, it responds, it reacts. So if you wet it down and then just comb it down like that with a bit of pressure, the heat from the head will start to dry the hair down and it will start to set itself into shape. So later on, my blow dry will be absolutely minimum. The key is to wet the root. Wet the root, because Day Day has a little bit of a conditioning agent, it becomes a little bit, you get a nice bit of build up on the hair, so it controls it really well. Okay, so that's my first zone done, okay? Now is when I start to play. So far my shape comes up, across, down. From this point here, I'm going to basically come across this way. So think of it like a wiggly line that I'm going to create, okay? So from here, let me spin the chair so I don't bang into the camera. From here, I've come round like this, and I'm really going to circulate my line. So I'm going to go round again. And what I have to do while I'm doing this kind of shape is you have to constantly visualize the shape in your mind. So I'm seeing the shape in my head of what I'm trying to create. As soon as I lose that idea in my mind, I will lose the point in which I need to maneuver my shape. So from this point here, I'm going to wiggle back around to this point here. So in effect, I need to cut all this hair here short. So what I'm going to do is from here, I'm then going to come around like this. But I'm actually going to curve it more. I want it to be more obvious. So 1 second. From here. Okay, I'm going to come from here and I'm going to wiggle it all the way around like that. Now in this scenario, I need to work away from my length again. So again, groom it really well so you're working away from the shape. This hair here wants to grow this way, wants to grow down naturally. So I need to move it out of the way so that it doesn't disturb the top of my guide.
Okay, so there's a question from Josh.
Hey Josh.
Okay, it says, hey Johnny.
Hey mate.
It says, what's the difference between working your sections to each previous guide as opposed to 1 into 2, 2 into 3, etc.? And how will this affect the shape?
Good question, Josh, mate. So basically what your number system does, your number system shows you one of two things, okay? Your number system shows you either the movement of the guide or the movement of the hair being introduced to the guide. So in this scenario, by saying 1 to 2, my guide is moving to the hair that I'm introducing. So my guide is section 1, 1 is going to 2, 2 is coming out from the base and is being cut. 2 is going to 3, 3 is coming out from the base and being cut. So in that scenario, my number system allows me to work a round shape because I'm working on the base. If I work to the previous, like the question that you're asking, Josh, if I change my number system, so for example it becomes 2 to 1, 3 to 2, what will happen is I will gradually get longer, because if I'm combing it this way, now, for example, 2 would be going to 1, so I'd be getting longer with 2. So what I need to make sure I do is I pull the hair that I'm introducing straight out from the base. That's really important. Really, really important. Now I know with Karina's hair, she's got a very, 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 very unusual head shape. So I'm very conscious of the lengths that I'm choosing in the back. She's got very, very predominant bones. You know, her occipital bone, mastoid process is very, very dominant. That's a good question, Josh. I hope I answered your question for you. Basically, in a nutshell, if I work to the previous, I'm going to increase my length with every section. So my shape won't necessarily be round, it will be more triangular, because I'm building into length with each section. Again, comb it away and then comb it forward. That's a good question. Okay, so now because I'm working back across into this bit here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working vertically till I get to this point. When I get to this point, I'm going to change. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is like this. Let me show you. So now, if I want to work away from the shape, I do this. I come from here, I come across horizontally. Technically, I suppose it's a bit more diagonally, I suppose, isn't it? I take my length on top, so my length from here, my guide from here, and if you want to come around this side, it'll be a bit easier for you.
That first question is actually from Kim Franklin Hickman.
Oh, hi Kim.
From South Africa.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kim.
So.
Good question, by the way.
Hey Kim, I hope you're well, darling. So, say hello to the team for me. So I'm going to take that length there, okay, and I'm going to use that and I'm going to go across like this, alright? Then I'm going to take this length here, this guide here, and I'm going to come down. I'm going to comb this hair out of the way really well. Try and be really methodical, really clean. Okay, I'm going to tilt the head down as far as I can. I need to work super clean. So now I'm working with the widening of the comb. I don't know if you can see that, but basically I'm changing that in order for me to be a bit easier for me to control this length in the back. The teeth are a bit wider, so my tension will be different. So in this area I need to be a bit more mindful of my tension. The main reason for that is because obviously the skin is much more flexible. So in this area here, I'm changing to the widening of my comb. Even though this area is also flexible, this tends to be the most flexible in the back. So now I'm going to work off that and work back around this way.
So that's kind of creating a slightly circular pattern.
Yeah.
You know, through that back area.
Yeah, so the idea is that we create short hair around the area of length. Now you could kind of put a guard number 4 or whatever on a clipper and kind of try and circulate with a clipper. Me personally, when we're obviously working shapes at Allilon, we tend to work a lot more mechanically with our scissors and focus more scissor work. Again, I'm connecting through, tilting the head back now, so I'm working on top of the head again. And look, I'm connecting it into the shape which I came across diagonally. Can you hear me okay on the video, guys? I don't know if you guys, if you can't hear me very well, let me know. Because we're working downstairs today and the ceilings are really high, so the sound might be a bit echoey. So I'll try and talk louder for you. So in this scenario, what I'm doing is I'm trying to comb it once and cut it once. And the reason for that is because I know the reality is with this type of length of hair, it's very hard to pick back up again in your fingers. So if you cut it wrong the first time, it's very hard to readjust the length. So in this scenario is a perfect example of when us as Allilon, we talk about Kokomo, which is comb it once, cut it once, move on. I'm basically doing that rapidly, constantly, because I don't want to have to try and pick the hair up again and worry about that shape.
So I'm going to bring you back to a a word that was kind of used, when I was working with Christopher a couple of weeks ago. The feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's kind of your interpretation of the feeling for this particular kind of shape?
That's a really good question, Andy. Sometimes, as a hairdresser, you're forced to confine yourself in a consumer world. The Allilon Unplugged events are very much driven to help people, give them tips, give them ideas, share our language, share the passion for what we do, really try and get people to be able to hopefully do this tomorrow. But every so often, it's nice just to get in the zone, cut hair and not worry about too much, and actually have a really good personal expression. In this scenario, I really wanted to just let go and do something that I wanted to do and be a bit more selfish. I didn't want to overthink about how it's going to be interpreted by other people. People aren't always going to like your work, and that's okay. They don't have to. As long as you know what you're trying to do is trying to change stuff. What I don't want to do is I don't want our company to be just reproducing and rechurning. I don't want to replicate, because I know we can. We can cut really beautiful, pure shapes, which I love. But at the same time, I want us to also be able to be like an artist and just create using hair as our material. So for me, the feeling discussion with this particular look is I'm really open to not being scared that things are going to go wrong. For example, let me give you a prime example. Here's the crown, yeah? You can see before I even cut it that that's an aggressive texture. It's going to jump straight up on me. You can see it. I even got a... So really, I should put this length here, but I don't want to. I want to challenge. I want to see how it's going to respond. I actually want to react to it. So I'm actually going to cut all that short and see how it responds. And usually, what you will tend to do, especially if you're doing something like a live feed, you try and avoid that. But I just want to be stimulated in my mind, and I want to challenge myself, and I don't want to be scared. I want to go on a journey, and hopefully you guys will go on the journey with me. But I just want to have fun, and I want to feel what I'm doing and be into it and be in the zone, you know. So, from a personal point of view, in regards to the feeling conversation, I just want to be able to just do what I want and not worry about if anyone's going to like it, if anyone's not going to like it. It's okay if they don't like it, because I don't like what everyone else does. I like some stuff, I don't like some stuff. It's just normal. When Christopher talked about having a feeling, in this scenario, I need to use my feeling, but I also need to use my techniques properly. Because if I don't use it properly, it could go very, very wrong.
There's a lot of response, Johnny. There's a lot of amens, and
yeah,
that's why we love you, Johnny.
Oh, bless. I know that we have to
no
do.
Fear, love it.
Yeah. I know we have to do consumer work. I get it, but
well, that's the inner brand.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what the inner brand is for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas I just feel like sometimes if I do what I know we can do things that people haven't necessarily seen before. I want to be able every so often to produce something where it challenges people's eyes, and people just don't get it. People actually, sometimes they don't actually like it, they reject it. But if they reject it, it's because they haven't seen it before, and it's a challenge. It's like, do I like it? I don't know. Do I like it? Do I not like it? And I just want to be able to just cut hair and just enjoy it and just get in the zone, man. Anyway, sorry. Back to my haircut. So now, I'm actually going to change it now. I'm not going to start up here. I'm going to start down here. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because it's going to be easier for me to work away from my length from the bottom and then come up. So I'm going to start here.
Are you going to build any weight to the top?
No.
It's going to be
it's going to be. I'm going to be working on the base with a round cutting line. So again, I'm going to choose my length. Now I know my length is the same width as my finger, so I'm not worried about getting the balance correct, because I know the length that I've chosen is exactly the same. And every section now, I'm going to be pulling it out from the base. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the root. and I'm making sure that the hair that I'm cutting is coming straight out.
So I had a question today.
Okay.
It's about, how do you train your staff in terms of dexterity with longer hair, with shorter hair?
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of, is there anything that you particularly teach?
Yeah, I mean, our curriculum, so think about Enna as being the consumer brand, which is supported from an education point of view by Allilon. In other words, Enna is proving that Allilon works, and the theory, the way we work, the techniques we use, the language we use is proof that it works in a business environment. So think of Enna as the outcome of the Allilon education program. So how we tend to do it is we tend to have an internal education system which has a criteria of techniques that people need to focus on. It has a criteria of work that we need to work on. And all these different haircuts, they basically challenge people to understand shape differently. So they do long haircuts, they do short haircuts, they do, we play obviously with the principles of primary shapes, i.e. round, squares, triangles. We focus mainly on the techniques, cutting lines, elevation and over direction. And we tend to really, just before I carry on, I've gotten to this point where the bend starts to pivot. So at this point here, I need to follow it all the way through now. So I get my guide running all the way through. I need to make sure I'm pulling the hair straight out from the base as I'm working. So now, from here, I'm going to come down, okay? I'm going to comb this hair really well out the way. Be really clean. Okay, now, there's no point me starting here. I can do, because I know I'm only working to this length anyway, but if I start on the bottom, I'm guaranteeing that I'm getting the same length. So again, coming here, I comb from the underneath. That way I comb my section straight out from the base. And I work the hair down. I need to be really careful when I'm picking up the hair around the length now. This hair here needs to be really groomed really well. Yeah. Don't, before you cut it, make sure you really make sure you're only cutting the hair that you should be cutting. Don't go cutting hair that you shouldn't be cutting. Okay, now I've got a guide that runs through there. Okay. I'm going to keep going now and increasing my section, going slightly more vertical as I go up. So I'll start off diagonal. Now when you go diagonal, you just got to be careful that you don't change the angle of the cutting iron to a graduated angle. In other words, you don't want it triangular looking, you still want it to be slightly flatter. So as I'm working up...
So is that why you're combing from the underneath?
Yeah, exactly. So by combing from the underneath, I'm encouraging elevation, which is encouraging me to work out from the base. That way, I tend to work round horizontally. So again, working cleanly.
Would it be round vertically as well?
In this scenario, it's going to be round vertically and round horizontally, yeah. So obviously in this scenario, my vertical shape is being created with the use of my cutting line as the dominant factor. And obviously my elevation is in play because I'm elevating the hair. And I am over-directing slightly. And this is an interesting discussion to have, actually. We can have it now in front of the camera. So a lot of the discussions that people have is when we talk about round shapes, and this is quite a good one to really focus on. When we talk about round shapes, what we talk about is, we say, oh, with a round shape, there is no over-direction. Now, let's think about that for a moment. It's correct in some senses, but it's actually wrong in some senses. So let's digest it, let's go a bit deeper. If you're working a round shape, the argument is that you're working on the base. If you're working on the base, there is no over direction. But it depends on what you're thinking about. So for example, when someone says to us, okay, on a round shape, is there over direction? Your response needs to be a question. And your question needs to be, well, it depends. what are we talking about? Are we talking about the movement of the guide, or are we talking about the hair that's being introduced to the guide? Because if we're talking about the movement of the guide, then yeah, there is other direction, because 1 is going to 2, 2 is going to 3, 3 is going to 4. But if we're talking about the hair that's being introduced, then no, because that's coming out from the base. And that's the principle of whether or not you're using other direction around shape. Technically you are.
But it's just not your cutting line.
Yeah, it's just not the hair that you're introducing, exactly. It's the guide that's moving. And that's the beauty of it. The more you analyse, the more you think about things, the more you try to dissect stuff, the more you realise that actually our knowledge has evolved so much since since I first started hairdressing, really. And the more and more we question things, the stronger our industry is going to become. And that's the key.
Another question from Kim.
Okay, Kim?
Okay, are you directing the guide or moving the hair to the guide?
So in this scenario...
That's basically what we were talking about.
Yeah, in this scenario, Kim, I'm basically moving the guide. So I'm working out from the base. So the hair that I'm cutting, I'm not physically over-directing, I'm just combing it out from the base. But the hair that my guide is moving.
So let me ask you, Johnny.
Okay.
And is there a certain time when you kind of introduce certain discussions about what we were kind of just talking about? Because in the kind of grand scheme of things, in the basic sense, that might confuse a youngster very much.
I think we have this discussion about how much we give and how much we don't give. And you've been part of these discussions as well, which is quite nice. It's this simple. If you get someone who's never ever done hairdressing before and teach them the Allilon way, they're not going to know any different, so there isn't going to be any confusion. It's only confusing when people have been doing hairdressing for a long time and obviously have a way of looking at hair. But if it's just like a baby, isn't it? Whatever you show it, it learns. So if we, from the beginning, you're told a certain thing, you learn a whole new way of thinking. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to challenge ourselves, challenge what it is we know, what it is we've been taught. Because we've been taught some amazing stuff by some amazing people. But actually, the more we analyse some of the stuff, it evolves, and some of it actually was incorrect. So it's just about exploring, changing, developing, moving on, progressing. I don't ever want to be stale.
No, sure.
I don't want to be
Another question here, John.
Okay.
Okay, from Nicola.
Hey, Nicola.
It's that how many people do you tend to have on your primary shapes course at any one time?
It's a good question. So in the UK, if you were to come to the UK and do a primary shapes course, it would be a ratio of 1 to 4. So 1 educator to 4 students.
Wow, that's good.
It's a very personal and quite an intense way of doing education. But at the end of the day, if you want to have that human touch, that real connection, you have to be able to give people the time, and ratios have a massive influence on that. Look at the shape that I've created now, guys. Look, I'm loving that. So in a minute, when I start carving outlines in, the shape will come alive. Now, I want to keep this length here. So what I'm going to start to do now is every other section I cut, I'm going to start to slowly, when I get to this area here, I'm actually going to start to change the angle of my cutting line to maintain some length around the front of the face. What I could do actually, I could do this actually. Let me do this, let me change that. I'm going to change that idea. I want to come around like this. So I'm going to basically leave all this out. There you go. And what I'll do here, I'll tilt the head down and I'll come around this way. So I'll come from the top, I'll come all the way down like this.
So you're coming from the front now?
Yeah, I'm going to take...
into your back length?
Yeah.
But you're still using that back length as a guide?
Yeah.
Are you working...
I'm using the length of the ear.
Evenly with the shape, or are you leaving a bit more length?
No. Same thing.
Same thing?
Same thing. I want it to be one shape and another shape. So I'm using the same point on my finger. I'm working on top of the head, as you can see now. My body positioning. I've actually tilted the head down and I'm standing on top of the head. So I'm working, it's like me working at the back on top of my fingers. So I'm working like that now. Okay? Now, because I know I'm using that part of my finger, I know my balance is going to be okay. I'm not worried about my balance. But now, again, I'm working away from my length. Head down from him. Thank you. I'm working away from my length.
So there's another question.
Cool. Who's that from?
From Antonio.
Hey, Antonio.
And it's how much is important your body position?
Okay, so very good question. Actually, before I answer your question, Antonio, we'll answer it. But before we answer that, let me just go back to the previous question. Sorry, because I didn't answer it properly. In the UK Academy, we do a ratio of 1 to 4. And internationally, when we do education internationally, we do a ratio of 1 to 6. And the reason for that is simply a question of when you go abroad, obviously it's a much more expensive process for people, flights, accommodation, and blah blah. So we have to adjust the actual ratios a little bit, but we try and keep it as minimal as possible because I don't know. Years ago, I used to teach like 1 to 13, and I wasn't teaching, I was supervising, and that's something that I never want to be, I don't want to do again, you know. I really want to feel like when we teach people, they feel like we're with them.
Okay, 1 to 13, where were you teaching?
Just in different places. So going back to the next question, which was body positioning.
What about yours and the models?
Yeah,
that's kind of quite a key thing. Do you know?
100%. I mean, like now, if Karina's hair was up like that, I'd have to really bend to get my angle, which is completely uncomfortable for me. So by tilting the head down, I can stand straight, my shoulders can be back, I can really focus on controlling my shape. The reason why body positioning is so important, Antonio, is because body positioning basically will help you either lose control of your over direction and elevation or be in control of the over direction and elevation.
It can change the shape quite dramatically.
Completely. My advice to you would be quite simple. Try and think of it like this. This is probably the easiest way of understanding it. The closer your arms are to your body, the more control you have. So anything where you're bending your spine or where your hands are like in really awkward positions, you're standing in the wrong position and your head's in the wrong position. If you're bending, like really bending, the head's in the wrong position or the chair's in the wrong position. So my advice to you is your back should be as straight as it possibly can. There are going to be scenarios obviously where it is all you might have to bend a little bit, but just think about it as the closer your arms are to your body, the more control you have. Yeah? It's very unnatural for your arms to be up here. This is not natural. Your arms will naturally come back to your body. Okay, I've got 2 more sections and then I'm done.
So Johnny, about the are you pulling each section straight at 90 degrees?
That's a very good question.
You don't like degrees, do you?
Okay, so we can discuss that. So
that's from Mandy, by the way. Though.
That's from Mandy. Hi, Mandy.
Mandy.
Okay, so we try. I had this discussion actually last night with a good friend of mine. Actually, I'm not sure if this is Josh that was talking to you before, but basically, as a company, we try to avoid talking degrees. And the reason why we try to avoid talking degrees is it's quite a simple thought process, really. It's that, what is 45 degrees and what is 46 degrees, what is 47 degrees, what is 48 degrees to you or me. There's such a minute difference. You can't be in control. You can't at any point say to me, well, this is exactly 46.7 degrees. It just doesn't make sense to me. You can say in the purest form, for example, this is a 45-degree angle of section, for example, or, but it's just a bit unrealistic to say that at any one point during a haircut, you know exactly the degrees for every single section, every single piece of hair in your hand. It just doesn't make sense. Unless you're working literally one slither of hair, where you can say that each hair is coming straight out, which you can't. Your section's always a certain amount of width, so there's always an element of other direction within that section. So we try to avoid talking to it. It's not that it's wrong, it's not that it's wrong. We just, as a company, we just choose to avoid talking about it because it's just, for us, it's a bit unrealistic that you're in control. But, you know, there's some amazing education companies out there who use that as their foundation, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it is what it is. But as a company, we don't focus on it.
It's about understanding internal shape, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean...
But understanding an internal shape when it's on kind of interesting head shapes, because not everyone, you know, we have a multitude of head shapes.
Yeah.
And just understanding growth patterns as well. I think that's...
Big time. Big time.
That's really it at the end of the day.
I mean, the more you kind of start to really analyse and think about all these things, the more you realise that everything's constantly playing a part. You're constantly jumping back and forward from your elevation, your over direction, and your cutting line. You're constantly. Some of them are in place. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes some of them are dominant. Sometimes they're not. And it's just about visualising a shape and understanding how to achieve an end result. It's the last section. And I'm just going to just gently cross-check it to make sure.
So interesting you said that. There's a question from George.
George, hi George.
Okay, and this question is sort of like, how do you, or can you cross-check all your haircuts? Do you do it technically, or do you kind of do it visually?
You have to do it in every way. So first of all, you visualise your shape, so you look at it, and technically when you get to a point of confidence, you should be able to look at your shape and see the problems in your mechanics. But if you're not 100% sure, then obviously you cross-check. The danger of cross-checking is a lot of people tend to cross-cut. Cross-cutting is something that we try to avoid as much as we can, because you tend to create lines in your shape. So really, all you should be doing is just the tips of the shape, just dusting it off. You shouldn't really be taking big chunks of hair away. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to blow dry all my length, blow dry all my haircut, and start to put my strength in. Okay? So styling product wise, I'm going to use the oil. Back and forward. Place that in the hair. Don't be scared to use that product.
So is your thought process is that obviously the longer and shorter hair have different texture properties?
100%.
Is that kind of, is that your kind of feeling?
Well, in this scenario, I do need the lengths to be different in order for them to respond differently. Now, my main focal point with this haircut is to have this kind of wiggly piece of length that runs through my shape. How I cut it in the middle, I don't know. How I cut it in the middle, sorry, I don't know yet.
It just depends how much it swells, because obviously this is newly bleached, isn't it?
100%.
So you're kind of like, you're in the hands of...
In the hands of the bleach gods.
In the hands of Maddie.
Yeah. So in this scenario, I'm using the relaxing fluid, which is basically a straightening balm, okay? And it's a cream, and you put it in your hands and really work it into the shape. And this will help me get a really beautiful, straight, smooth, silky finish to the haircut. It is quite hydrating as well, which is always really good. You can see the length that I've chosen. I've tried to manage the head shape of Karina's head.
So Johnny, do you draw the haircuts kind of after you've done them?
Is that a question?
Generally, yeah, it's just a question from...
You asked a question?
From Gina.
Gina, hi Gina. Yes, we do. If I'm honest, I said this to her before, actually last night I was in bed thinking about what I'm going to do today and how I'm going to cut it and what it is that I want to create. And I was hoping that obviously Karina would be up for letting me do it. And Karina came in today and she was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I've been growing it and I've been waiting for this for ages. What are we doing? So I was like, okay, well this is what I'm thinking. Now Karina basically is a manager for a restaurant, but it's a really quite an expensive hotel. Where is it? It's just
in
behind.
Mayfair, yeah.
It's in Mayfair, right? Just literally behind the Ritz. So it's quite a. You could say it's a little bit of a kind of. What's the word? Conforming environment that she works in, but at the same time, because of the way she looks, because she is that beautiful, she can get away with it, and they won't say anything to her. You know, she can make the haircut really work. Just to bring your attention to what I'm doing now, I'm using a volume mousse. Now I'm not using the volume mousse because of the fact that I want to create volume. I'm using the volume mousse because it has a really, really, really good setting agent on it. So it will control the growth patterns, and it will control the length for me, and it will make it the hair a bit stiffer. So when I'm blow drying it, it will set much quicker, and it will set into place. And I'm making sure I really get the roots, because the root of the hair, especially in the front, it's got a very slight movement to it. Good. Okay. So what basically will happen is, to go back to your question, Gina, will I draw this haircut? Yeah, I probably will actually. Maybe not
Also,
today.
did you kind of, you obviously drew it out in your mind, but would you ever kind of, you know, put pen to paper before the haircut and map out the section?
Well, when I was, good question, when I was talking to Karina before, didn't I? I got the board out, and she was like, what are you thinking of doing? So I tell you what, let me show you. So I drew it.
Yeah.
And she was like, sounds interesting. Okay, let's do it. Why not? Let's do it. I'm like, "Alright." So I'm going to use a nozzle, and the reason I'm going to use a nozzle is because it will help me set the hair really well. I'm going to focus on the short hair first. I have to be careful because obviously the hair's quite sensitive because of the bleach. Now, can you see this hair here? I'm going to let it do what it wants. You know, before I said that, normally I said that I'd be conscious of that crown and how it's going to react. But I don't mind it. I want it to react. I want it to come alive, and I want it to become a feature. I could have flipped my wiggle, but I don't want it. I want it to stand out, and I want it to react. And often, if I was to give you guys some advice, one piece of advice would be, when you're training yourselves to cut hair, because in theory what you should be doing is at least once a week you should be locking yourselves in the salon late at night and just practicing cutting shapes. What you should do is, if you know that it's going to jump in a certain point, and normally you will basically keep length there, just once in a while challenge yourself and do the complete opposite to what you should do.
There is a question about, it's from Nicola.
Hi Nicola.
Can we talk us through the colour?
Can we talk about the colour? That's a very good question.
Is Maddie around?
Maddie's not around, but I can try and get somebody to talk about the colour. We'll come back to that.
If not, maybe Maddie post it.
Yeah, if not, we'll post it on. I know Yana didn't do the toner. Somebody else put the toner on. So
Another question here, it's like, why did you use volume mousse and relaxing fluid together?
okay, so relaxing fluid. Good question. Where's that from?
I actually can't pronounce the name because I think it's in Russian.
Okay. Well, thank you for your question.
I
So
do
basically,
apologise.
okay.
Anyone speak Russian?
I'll see you later on. So basically, the mousse is a really good setting agent, whereas the relaxing product allows you to get a bit more tension on the hair to get it smoother. So they both do different functions. And it's interesting to think about when you're choosing your products, you really need to understand what each product does. There's no point just sticking with the same products for the sake of, because you know they work. You need to constantly mix your products around to challenge the way you see products. Your scalp okay, Karina?
Yeah.
Am I hurting you?
No, no, sorry.
Okay. So I'm really going to focus on the growth pattern in the front. I'm going to use a really strong wrap drying technique, and I'm really focused on the root of the hair. Really focus your airflow going down the hair. So, for those of you who tune in regularly, thank you for revisiting us today. And for those of you who is your first time tuning in, I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to share it. You can actually share it live while we're doing it if you want your friends to see it, and if you want to share what it is we're working on at the moment. On Thursday this week, I fly to New York, to the Daverness head office, and I'm going to be doing a hairbrained evening. And for those of you who don't know what hairbrained is, hairbrained is a fantastic hairdressing community. It's run by two good friends of ours, Gerard and Randy. And basically, the idea behind that particular website is that they're trying to give people visibility. They're trying to create a kind of a community of sharing, which for me is, I mean, Allilon, that's what we are. So it really kind of hones into my emotional hairdressing strings. And I'm going to be there on Friday doing a hairbrained live, so feel free to tune in. If you haven't heard of them before, if you haven't seen any of the stuff that's on there, there's some really amazing stuff on there. So feel free to have a look at the Hairbrained Facebook page. Friday, I'm not sure what time it will be yet, to be honest, but it won't be UK time, 7 o'clock. Then from New York, I fly to Toronto and I do a primary shapes course there, and Madeline does a creative colour course. And I'm going to be doing next Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the Unplugged event from the Academy there. So again, I'm not sure exactly what time it will be.
Oh, thanks for flying me out there, Johnny.
Yeah, Andy's going to be coming with me to film it. But I'm going to put him in a bikini.
Nice. It's a bit chilly though, isn't it, for a bikini? I'll do it though. Fly me out there. So just a quick question, Johnny. So back to the cutting scenario. When you're cutting a section, you cut past your knuckles.
Okay, good question. So let me show you. Okay. Okay, so when I cut hair, this is a really good way of testing your tension. If you get your fingers, you place them like that. Get your scissors and run them up and down your fingers like that. And basically, as you run them in, you can basically push and see how easy it is to get the hair through. So I can see that at this point, right down there, I've got zero tension. But as I go up higher, it gets harder for me to move up. So I know the point where my tension becomes strong. So it's from there. I've got quite fat fingers. It's a bit different, yeah. And to be fair, I wasn't really squeezing very hard, but basically that is where, there is my limit. So push your blades and try and get them through. And the points where it glides through like there, that's where you basically need to stop cutting. So I always cut to about here with myself. If you do have a situation where you've got quite big gaps here, what you do is just gently roll one finger slightly forward or one finger slightly back, because these two knuckles here are basically what clash and stop it from going tight. Okay, so now is when my haircut is going to start to slowly come alive now, okay? So I'm going to start to work with my clipper, because just simply for time purposes, it will speed up all my outlines, especially through the back. So I'm going to tilt the head down, and I'm going to play with this idea of this wiggle. Okay? So there's my area of length. Can you see my area of length? Here. So I'm allowed to work around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a wiggly type feeling with the outline as well.
So, if this was curly hair, would you cut this differently?
I think your choice of length probably would be a bit different. Yeah. Would my approach, i.e. the method in which I'm moving, for example, the direction of the number system, no, it wouldn't. That would all be the same. The difference would basically be the choice of length. Potentially the tension will be a lot stronger. Yeah. I have to use a lot more tension in the shape. Let me jump over there. I wouldn't necessarily be in this area, guys. Go back to your scissors, simply because you can manipulate the tips of your scissors much easier than the clipper when it comes to creating more of a circular shape. And then you can clean it up with your clipper if you want to. But just to make the curve a bit nicer, use your scissor. Now can you see I want to keep this area of length in front of the ear. So now, come on now.
Reminds me of Urban Angels. Sorry to bring back to it.
Sorry?
Vanda. You remember that?
I do, yeah. I do actually.
It doesn't actually. It's completely different. But it's just that front bit.
That little front bit that flicks.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut it all off anyway. So
No.
I am. Let's see. Not this one. I'll keep that one. I'm going to cut all that off.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean
No problem. At the end of the day, it's a haircut which, whatever you do, there's always going to be an element of referencing. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So again, now can you see how this hair is buckling on the ear? Normally you'd cut that off, but I don't mind it because I want that to flick out. I want this idea of this hair kind of being quite rough and quite tough.
Yeah, it kind of sits.
Yeah. Normally you'd clear the ear completely, but I don't mind it. Okay. Now I've got to now obviously use mirror. Really important to use a mirror to check your shape. Then come around the other side. This side here. You can see my length here. I can play with it after, but for now I'm just going to ignore it. And then again, ignore my length. And then come round. Good. Okay, so when you're working your outline, you can definitely club cut it. Club cutting, for those of you who are not 100% sure, is basically when you just basically cut a straight line, just like that, where your scissors are parallel to your line. Or you can chip the line. Chipping is obviously where your scissors comes in at a slight angle, like I'm about to do now. Hold it here. So here, comb the hair down again. I'm going to play with the outline a little bit, have some fun, and get rid of all that. So this will be chipping. And then come down, work up and then work down. Just the time. Just get rid of your excess. Now on this side, the hair's not sitting as well over the ear, so I'm just going to clear the ear a little bit. Again, it goes back to the growth pattern discussion, doesn't it?
So obviously you're actually cutting with the clippers for essence of time.
Yep.
But there is a slight difference, isn't there, between a clipper blade and a scissor blade. Is that correct?
100% correct. Basically, when you clip a hair, or when you cut hair with clippers, the actual tips of the hair, if you think about, for example, my comb being the end of one piece of hair, if I cut it with my scissor, regardless of how I approach it, the tip of the hair itself is always cut on a slight diagonal. Whereas when you use a clipper, what happens is, because of the way the blades close, it's cut a lot flatter and almost quite square. So the tip feels a lot more aggressive on your fingers. Hence why when you clipper somebody's hair and run your hands up it, it feels a certain way. And when you scissor over comb someone's hair and run your hands up it, it feels slightly softer. It's basically because of the fact that the ends of the hair, the tips of the hair, are cut in a different way. So I've cut the majority of my outline through the back. I've left that length in the middle. Still, I'm not going to touch that yet. Now I'm going to start to cut the fringe. Now, if you stand this way, Andy, and just focus in the mirror. If you come behind me.
Well, let's, which way are you cutting?
I'm going to cut this way using the mirror.
Which side?
I'm going to start this side. So, what I'm going to do, I could keep the length so I get this kind of soft, quiffy shape. But what I'd rather do is I'd rather craft the outline in. So, by using the mirror, I'm able to basically visualize my shape as it's created. Now, I'm not worried at all about the cleanliness of the line right now. What I am worried about is the proportions and the balance. That's my number one focus. So by using the mirror and looking in the mirror, I can see my shape as I'm creating it. So here, on this side, and Dimfo, stand behind me and use the mirror if you can. From the actual mirror itself.
So it's you'll find it's very, very far away. So
there you go. Okay. So here, now I'm going to leave a little bit of a tussle. Now I'm going to come into the hair. I'm going to create a strong fringe area. So basically I'm visualizing the line of my fringe going all the way across. And then from here, I'm going to carve it down. just like that. Just like that. I'm using the mirror to turn the head constantly. And the more and more I refine it, now that the basic shape that I want to create is in, now I can start to focus on the detail. So, now I come in front of my body. Now the reason why I've carved it is because with Karina, she's got really, really, really strong features. And by creating some strength around the face, I'll basically highlight her eyes and really expose her face. So, I'm not worried about this now. Again, just using the chipping technique to really, really get those ends and make it strong but slightly broken. Tilt the head to the side. I'm going to keep this length here. And I'm going to go up.
Seems like that length. Looking pretty.
Thanks, mate. It's getting there. So again, I'm working up into my fringe. So I'm carving the hair up away from the face. Again, you can use the clipper to help you strengthen that line.
So question for you.
Good.
From Daniel.
Hey Daniel.
Okay, how much time do you expect for refining your cuts in summer?
Okay, so we work on an hourly appointment. First of all, good question. We work on an hourly appointment. Just before I carry on, I'm going to look at the hairline. Hairline goes higher than the line. Can you see? The hairline's up here. So I could afford to take this and make this more graphic. So I'm going to take this away. So I'm going to go right up to the hairline. So we have hourly appointments in the salon, and usually what happens is the shampoo and the conditioning process should take about 7 minutes. A consultation, 5 minutes, shampoo, 7 minutes, including the massage. So I know my time restraints now are a little bit more limited. My advice would be cut it right the first time. That way you can get the basic shaping very quickly, and if the shape's in very quickly, you can then basically spend a lot of time refining. Me personally, I think about a large proportion of your time should be spent on the dry hair, because that's the point where you're putting your signature on the shape. So my advice to you would be try and leave at least 15 to 20 minutes on the refining process. If the hair's short like this, obviously you don't have to blow dry as much, so it's a bit easier for you. I like that, that's cute. I like that a lot. So again, look what I'm doing, I'm using the wide end of the comb now. I'm combing it down, like that. And I'm basically using the chipping technique to just really, really get that perfect, that line. I want that line to be really fluid. And I like the fact that it's got the softness around here, because this basically points to the eye, which is what I want to try and focus on. But if you look in the mirror now, I've carved out all the outline, and I've got this little wiggly bit in the middle. Take that away. I'm going to take this up higher actually. No, yeah. Yeah, I might do actually. I might take that higher so it goes into the hairline. Basically starts here. Can you see? So I don't want to go too much into the hairline, but I can definitely lift that a bit higher. Definitely lift that a bit higher, and that will again bring more focus on the face. I can really afford to expose the face because Karina's got incredible features. A very, very proportioned face. Now can you see, by cutting little triangles, it creates a slightly more chiseled effect on your line. Like that. Good.
Well, I've always said, you know, the best, you know, beauty tip is choosing your genes. Choosing your parents wisely.
Yeah. How often does that happen? You see my parents? I'm joking. Mum, Dad, I'm just joking, I love you. Okay, let me just do one thing. Can you see here? I want to separate the fringe area here in the middle a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come here and I'm going to follow my layering through to here. So I'm actually going to get rid of this bit here. So calm it down. Tilt the head towards me so I'm not bending. Like this, sorry. Yeah, perfect, thank you. Got my finger there.
So you're refining, okay. So it's what you're saying is sort of, you know, cut your intention sort of, you know, correct kind of first, then you limit the amount of refinement.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day...
I mean, hair swells though, doesn't it, when it's, you know, from wet to dry?
100%.
You know?
100%.
Do you like cutting from wet to dry?
Yeah, well, as you know, the past couple of Allilon Unplugged, we've been doing focused quite a lot on this principle of working wet to dry because we believe it's an art that's been lost. So it's something that we want to focus on. And go inside the shape like that and really carve that out.
So I've actually got the colour formula here.
Do you want to show the guys the formula?
So I'm just going to swing around while Johnny's...
Do you think?
Okay. So the colour formula, for those people who like to know, is bleach mask. Okay. So it's bleach mask hair bleaching powder. Okay, with 20 vol. If I'm reading this correct, if I'm not, please correct me. Okay, and then the toner afterwards is 10.01, 40 grams, plus 4.221 gram, 4.55, 0.5 grams, and 5.56, 0.5 grams, plus, I think that's 5 vol. Okay, and that's from the mask with Vibrochrome. Okay, and mixing ratio is 1:2. So I hope that kind of makes sense, everyone. It means absolutely nothing to me, but I'm sure it's absolutely gorgeous. Okay.
Thanks for that, Andy.
Did that sound right?
Yeah, you saved me from doing it. I think that's what's so interesting about our industry. It's like colouring hair for me is you've got to give colourists so much respect for their understanding of the science behind it, because we as cutters have a science when it comes to shape, understanding how hair responds, blah blah blah. But the colour formulation for me was always a bit of a world that I didn't really want to discover too much of, because I'm not really ironically, I was never really a numbers person, but now we've ended up creating a language which is all based around numbers, ironically, so it's quite funny really how things work, how they pan out. Okay, so now what I've done is I've basically carved out that shape to really identify the fringe as a separate shape to the rest of the hair.
Just turn your head again, Johnny.
No, that's going to sweep like that.
Cool, man.
So I've got this softness that runs through here, and I've got this crafted shape. Okay, so now I've got obviously my wiggle that runs through my haircut. My wiggle's here. So with this type of hair, this principle of the wiggle, basically for me I've got a piece of length that I can play with. All I want to do is I want to cut it so it's a bit stronger, get rid of some of the dead ends in it, and then I'm going to style it really clean. So I'm going to start the crown. Why am I going to start the crown? Because it has the most movement in that area. So that will help me decide how much length to take off without the hair springing on me. But as soon as I start cutting this hair, you will see the shape will become much shinier.
So are you blending any area in?
No, wait. This is going to be completely.
It's going to be just club cutting.
It's going to be club cutting the shape. Okay. And the idea is that I can style it in a minute with lots of texture and volume, but at the same time, I could also spray it down flat and get it smooth. So I'm completely open to what I do at the moment. I just need to get rid of some of the dead hair. So my sectioning pan, I'm working on the base again. And I really wanted to do something tonight that was a little bit different to last week. Last week I did something which was very, very... I liked last week's haircut, if I'm honest. It was really pretty. If I could do it again, I'd probably have cut off a little bit of the length on reflection, just because it would have given the haircut a bit more strength. But at the same time, I did like the fact that it was quite soft and loose and, you know. Now what you should do by me taking this down, as you comb the hair down, you should see the shape slowly forming on top, which mirrors the zone. Again, now the bottom, I'm actually going to keep slightly more of a triangular cutting line because I want to keep the length on the bottom a bit longer. Carry this way, but put your head down for me. Excellent. I'm using the wide end of the comb, again, because I'm in the danger area, which is obviously the hairline. This hair here. Good. Last couple of sections. Comb it all out. Get my control. And take the hair away. So what's happening now is I could get Maddie to colour this length a different colour so you'd see all this breaking on the shape. But because I didn't know what I was going to do, we kept the colour quite simple. Okay, now with this area here, I want to keep quite a lot of the length in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work a section from the front to the back. I'm going to comb the hair up. Use the length that I chose at the crown. And basically work out into my length in the front. Last section. And I'm almost done. I'll cross check the top and the back and I'm done. Just double check and refine the detail work. And then I should be finished. So if you've got any questions, now's the time to ask them. As I'm coming to conclude my shape in a minute. I'm going to cross check my shape now. Cross check my lengths. Make sure they're clean. Now I'm using a slightly more tension. So I'm using the tight end of my comb. You can see the shape as in a minute when I start to actually style the hair, you will see all the little lengths pop out, you will see the whole haircut come alive. I don't know how it's looking on camera, I don't know if it's looking any good, but it's starting to really come alive now, my shape. Now, by standing on top of the head this way, I'm naturally elevating slightly more. So I'm going to avoid getting any kind of lines in my shape as it drops down. And every single section. Okay, good. So I'm getting this little play area here, which I'm quite enjoying. I'm getting this little play area here, which I'm quite enjoying. I'm getting this little play area here, which I'm quite enjoying. and I'm getting this little play area here, which I quite enjoy. So the idea is that I've got certain strengths within the haircut, but then I've got these areas of length that I can play with the product. And I like the way you can actually see the wiggle. So I'm going to style it so you can actually see the wiggle. It's going to be really cool. Okay, so first things first. Oil. Run the oil through the hair. That will give me a bit of shine and a nice finish on the hair. Loving that little wiggle. You see it more and more as I apply product and I start to spray it into position. You'll start to see it come alive, which will be really cool. I think I'm gonna quite like it. Okay. Now is when I start to style the hair. We use a little bit of shine spray, a little bit of extra hold. Okay. The shine spray I'm going to save it to the end. This hold hairspray, this is really, really strong with Davin's one. So I'm just going to gently spray it and position the hair into position. This hair here, I don't mind it if it's a bit kind of tousled and a bit not neat, but this I want it all nice and neat. I'll check my line one more time in a minute. Put it down for me. Okay, now this bit here is the bit where it gets interesting, because I want to be able to show you the wiggle. So Andy, if you come behind me, head down. So this hair here, what I do is I'm going to let the haircut do the work. So I'm going to spray it, spray all the short hair down. And I'll start to craft the hair into position. I'm using the wide end of the comb to style the hair. I'm not scared to manipulate the shape a little bit. I don't mind if it's quite tousled or anything and a bit looser. Okay, now
there's a comment from a gentleman, Pedro in Chenko.
Tell him, is he jet lagged?
He said beautiful, Johnny.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Okay, big shout out to everyone else. Michaela, big shout.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do now is just spend a bit of time.
And Jamie, insane shape. Okay, killer look from Laura. Hello, George.
Okay, so last minute, just going to basically spend 2 or 3 minutes making sure that all my lines are really, really beautiful. Really, really super clean. So club cut it and then chip it. Like I said, tonight I really wanted to do something that kind of I'm into. Something quite fun, something that's related to our latest collection. Something that for me can sometimes again be, like I said before, slightly challenging to the eye.
Big shout from Theo.
Hi Theo.
Beautiful work, there's loads of comments coming through. Great work from Daniel.
Thanks mate. Head down for me. I like the idea of that wiggly type line that runs through it. Tidy up some of the outlines. with the outline of the ear. With the front hairline. Okay, so again, using the clipper just to get that little bit of sharp edge to it. I might change the outline on the back actually. Yeah, I'm gonna change this outline on the back just so basically this becomes more obvious, this length here. Because the length I had initially was so short, I couldn't really do anything with it. So I'm actually gonna go slightly higher into the shape. So if you come around here, Andy. So what I'm going to do here is from this point here, I'm going to arc it slightly higher.
Whoa, very nice.
And what I'll do is it will exaggerate the shape that I have because my initial length is quite limited. So by doing that, it just exaggerates that length a little bit. Yeah, I prefer that. Could do the same here actually. Sorry, I've gone a little bit quiet just because I'm in the zone. I'm just trying to get the finishing touches going. This is the bit where basically the point where you finish is the point where you're setting your standard. So my advice to you is when you think you've finished, we have a saying in Allilon, when you think you've finished, you've only just started. So check one more time. And every time you do that, you basically raise your standard that little bit more in regards to the execution of your haircut.
So Johnny, you have some colleagues from Vietnam watching.
Cool.
And it's 2:30 a.m. in the morning.
Is it? Oh, thank you for watching, guys.
They rock.
Thank you for you guys. A hardcore hair. This is tremendous.
So that's Mia and...
Cool.
I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
So I could dress it. Hook. I could dress it like that. It's a bit more
Big
like
thanks to you guys.
I could dress it like that, so it's a bit more of a little funky twist thing. Or I could dress it like that, so it curves around this way. It could be whatever I want it to be, really. Or I could wear it in a bit more of a quiffy bit on top, like I could spike it up, so it's a bit more of a... I quite like the fact that it's like a little kiss curl. Adds a bit of a... Okay, maybe I might dress this a little bit up and I'm done. Okay, so a quick recap on my shape, how I did it. How did I cut my shape? Let me do hair. I started my haircut by zoning off the fringe area. So what I did, let me just, 1 second. So I started my haircut off on the left-hand side, right-hand side, sorry. And I started off by sectioning off a curved section that allowed me to maintain all my hairline in the front and all this looseness here. And I basically curved the section round, up, down, across, and then round. So basically it's like a big wiggly line that runs through the haircut. I then cut a round cutting line, working on the base all the way round. Then I came across this way horizontally, so diagonally, getting a guide in to isolate my zone, my short hair. And then I came off that vertically, round cutting line on the base. Then I carved an outline into the shape. Then I came around this side, took the same sectioning with the zone, but I started my haircut at the bottom with diagonal sections, but even though I was taking diagonal sections, I still elevated the hair off the base. It was a round shape. And I worked all the way through. Again, when I got to this point here, where I've got my length, I basically stopped. I came around this way, and then worked around cutting line from the front working back to the crown. So in other words, all this hair here was cropped down into a shorter style. Then I obviously had length running through the front and length running through the centre. I basically carved my external shape in, and I went for quite a graphic little look, carving the shape out. I like the fact that this hair here has an element of softness to it. I like the fact that it moves, and it's just been bleached, so it still has this kind of element of straightness to it, but tomorrow I have a bit more of a bend to it, which would be quite nice. And then the length from the top, I basically did a round cutting line, working on the base, all the way down to maintain some length. And I like this little I like the fact that it's got little areas of just tuffety hair, but I also like the fact that it's got this kind of, you can really see the bend and the wave and the shape, which I think is quite cool. I just need to I'm going to get Madeline to colour this quite a bright colour to really see the difference in the shape. And then I carved my outline, leaving my fringe. So this is my overall shape. I hope you like it, I really do. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Karina for letting me cut her hair. It's always easy to cut somebody's hair when it's classically, she's got a beautiful look about her. Next week, on Friday, I'm going to be in New York doing the Hairbrain. So for those of you who are not sure what Hairbrain is, if you go to either hairbrain.com or if you type in Hairbrain on Facebook, you will be able to find their page. Some great stuff, some great people do some great stuff. I'll be on that on Friday. And then on next Tuesday, I'll be in Toronto, which we'll do something, I'll probably maybe do something on a mannequin, something maybe a bit soft and a bit layered and a bit different to kind of what I've done today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Andy for filming. Thank you for any feedback. And we'll see you next week, okay? Thank you so much.
And I'll be wearing a bikini.
He'll be wearing a bikini in Toronto. See you later.